The envelope landed on Harlan Pierce's mahogany desk with a weight that defied its thin paper construction. His hand trembled as he stared at the faded wax seal, the one that had been broken just moments before by a daughter who wasn't supposed to be his. The Scotch glass sat forgotten beside his leather chair, amber liquid catching the late afternoon light, filtering through plantation shutters. 24 years. That's how long the truth had been hiding in plain sight, dusting his furniture, arranging his flowers, making his coffee exactly how he liked it. 2 sugars, no cream. She's ours, the letter said in Mara's delicate handwriting. Those 2 words kept echoing in his skull like a scream in an empty cathedral. Harlan pressed his palms against his eyes, but the memories came anyway. That summer, the blue dress with tiny white flowers. The way Mara laughed when he told her she was too good for a man like him. He'd been engaged then, to a woman his father Sage watched grow up in his peripheral vision. The one with amber eyes that reminded him of something he couldn't name was his daughter, his blood, his responsibility, his failure. The realization hit him like a freight train made of regret and lost time. But let's back up, because you need to understand how a man fires the only person who ever truly saw him, and how that single phone call would shatter everything he thought he knew about his life. Hi, viewers. Kindly tell us where you're watching from and what time it is. Warm welcome to the family. Enjoy the story. 3 days earlier, Harlan had been a different man. Or maybe he'd been the same man, just wearing a different mask. He sat in his home office, surrounded by monitors displaying property values and investment portfolios, when his accountant's email arrived with a subject line: recommended cost reductions. Mara Linton's name appeared on the list like an accusation. Unnecessary household staff. The report called her, as if 18 years of loyalty could be reduced to an Excel spreadsheet cell marked for deletion. As if the woman who'd held his late wife's hand during chemotherapy, who'd kept this empty house from feeling like a tomb, who'd asked for nothing except her modest salary and Christmas off, as if she was just another line item. Harlan knew it was wrong. He felt in his gut, that sick twist that told him he was about to do something he couldn't take back. But feelings were luxuries men like him couldn't afford. At least, that's what his father had taught him. That's what 49 years of building an empire had reinforced. It's just business, he muttered to himself, clicking the schedule call button before he could change his mind. The next morning arrived cold and gray, the kind of October day that feels like a warning. Mara received a message on her phone while folding laundry in the basement. Mr. Pierce would like to speak with you at 10 a.m. She knew. Somehow, she already knew. Women like Mara develop a sixth sense for abandonment. You don't raise a daughter alone without learning to read the signs. The averted eyes, the clear throats, the sudden meetings that feel like funerals. She'd been through this before, in a different way, on a different morning 24 years ago when Harlan chose duty over her. At exactly 10 o'clock, she knocked on the study door. Her uniform was pressed crisp, her hair pulled back in its usual neat bun. She carried herself with the kind of dignity that comes from surviving things that should have broken you. Harlan couldn't meet her eyes at first. He straightened papers that didn't need straightening, adjusted his tie, cleared his throat twice. The words felt like broken glass in his mouth. Mara, he began, his voice flat and rehearsed, you've been with me a long time. You've done excellent work. But I'm restructuring my expenses, making some necessary changes. I'll be letting you go. Of course, I'll provide 3 months severance. You're firing me. Her voice didn't rise, didn't crack. It was a statement, not a question. He forced himself to look at her then. Her face was calm, but her hands, those hands that had scrubbed his floors, cooked his meals, straightened his collar before important meetings, were trembling slightly at her sides. It's not personal, he said, and the lie tasted bitter even as he spoke it. Something flickered across her face, hurt, maybe, or recognition. She smiled then, a small, wounded smile that would haunt him for days. It never is, Mr. Pierce. 6 months into construction, she turned and walked out. The Elm Street Community Center started looking less like a dream, like a countdown to something more like irreversible. The walls that had once separated finality masters that made Harlan's chest tighten. Opening the space, he sat there in the silence, welcomed instead of divided, telling himself he'd done the right thing. Had prepared countless necessary meals transformed into a commercial space. She was resourceful, cooking classes. She'd
and
land
food
on her
preparation
feet.
training.
But the air in the
formal
room
dining room
became a
childcare
heavy with the weight
area
of something
with
he
tiny
couldn't
tables
name.
and bright
He
colors.
poured himself a
The
drink
study
at
where
11
Harlan
in the
had
morning,
fired Mara
which
was
should have been
now
his
an
first
office
clue
where she worked
that this
as
wasn't
assistant
just a
director,
business. That
planning
night,
programs
Harlan
and hiring
couldn't sleep.
staff.
He lay in
Every
his
hammer
king-size
strike,
bed in his
every
master
painted
suite,
wall,
staring
every
at
installed
shadows on the
fixture
ceiling,
felt like redemption,
remembering
taking
things he'd
physical
spent
form.
years trying to
But
forget.
transformation
The way
wasn't
Mara
smooth.
used to hum
It
while she
never
worked.
was.
How
The
she'd
money
always
ran
left
out
a fresh
faster than
pot of
projected.
coffee.
Before,
Permit issues
he
delayed
came
work for
downstairs.
weeks. The summer she wore that blue dress, when they were both younger and stupider and believed that maybe, just maybe, different worlds could touch. Have you ever looked at your own child and felt she kept reading? 5 minutes passed. Then 10. I sat there, uncomfortable and exposed, wondering if I'd made a mistake showing her. Finally, she looked up. Her eyes were wet. Harlan, this is really honest. Painfully honest. Too honest. Os, a woman who could merge companies and secure empires. Love wasn't part of that equation. So he'd made his choice, and Mara had made hers. Now, sitting in a house that felt more like a mausoleum than a home, surrounded by wealth that meant absolutely nothing, Harlan understood the price of that choice. The girl he knew, she shook her head. Not at all. This is a kind of honest that could actually help people. She scrolled back to the section. This part, where you write about mistaking kindness for weakness, that's going to resonate with a lot of men who've made similar mistakes. He convinced himself that marrying Catherine was the right choice. His father had been clear. The merger depended on it. The company's future hung in the balance. Personal feelings were irrelevant. Catherine was sophisticated, connected, appropriate. She understood the rules of their world. And Mara? Mara was just a help. That's what his father had called her. So Harlan had done what men in his position do. He'd compartmentalized. He'd moved forward. He'd built his empire and lived his life and pretended that summer never happened. When Catherine got sick, Mara had been there, caring for her with a tenderness that made Harlan's throat tight. Even then, he'd been too much of a coward to acknowledge what that kindness meant. Now Catherine was gone. The company was struggling despite his best efforts, and he'd just fired the only person who'd stayed. The guilt sat in his stomach like lead. 2 days after the firing, rain drummed against the windows like impatient fingers. Harlan was reviewing contracts when the doorbell rang, cutting through the afternoon quiet like an alarm. He wasn't expecting anyone. Deliveries came to back. His assistant had the week off. He opened the door to find Serena standing on his porch, rain-soaked and furious. She'd grown into a striking young woman, 24 now, tall and self-possessed, with her mother's quiet strength written in every line of her face. But it was her eyes that stopped him. Those amber eyes that had always seemed familiar in a way he couldn't place, now blazing with an anger that was absolutely, unmistakably his own. "Mr. Pierce," she said, her voice controlled but trembling at the edges. "We need to talk." Harlan stepped back, suddenly aware of how small he felt in his own doorway. "Of course. Please, come in." She walked past him, water dripping from her coat onto his pristine marble floors. She didn't apologize for the mess. She stood in the foyer of the house where she'd spent countless childhood weekends, looking around with an expression that mixed nostalgia and disgust. "You fired my mother." It wasn't a question, but Harlan answered anyway. "It was a business decision, Serena. I'm sorry if..." 18 years. Her voice cracked on the numbers, emotion breaking through her careful composure. 18 years she gave you. She took care of your house, your wife, your life. She was here for every birthday you forgot to celebrate, every holiday you worked through, every night you sat in that study pretending you weren't lonely, and you just cut her loose like she was nothing. The words hit him like physical blows. Harlan rubbed his temples, a headache blooming behind his eyes. "I understand you're upset, but you don't know the full situation. The economy, my investments." "No." Serena's voice turned sharp as a blade. "You don't get to hide behind money problems. You have 7 properties, Mr. Pierce. I've been here. I've seen the cars, the art, the watch collection. You could afford to keep her. You just chose not to." The truth of it burned. Harlan had no defense because she was right. He'd made a choice, just like he'd made a choice 24 years ago. And just like then, he was choosing wrong. "You've changed." Serena continued, softer now, almost sad. Or maybe you haven't. Maybe this is who you've always been. Silence stretched between them, thick and suffocating. Harlan wanted to explain, to justify, to make her understand that life was complicated and decisions were hard, and sometimes you had to do things that hurt. But the words wouldn't come. Finally, he managed. You don't understand the full picture. Serena's expression shifted then, something hardening behind her eyes. Maybe I understand more than you think. She reached into her purse with shaking hands and pulled out an envelope. Old, cream-colored, sealed with wax that had faded to a dull red. The paper was creased, as if it had been carried for a long time, held on to like a secret too heavy to share. My mother told me never to show you this, Serena said, her voice barely above a whisper. She said it was her burden to carry, not mine, but you left her no choice. You left me no choice. She placed the envelope on the entry table with a gentleness that felt like violence. Then she looked at him one last time, tears finally spilling down her cheeks, mixing with the rain. Sometimes the truth is the only thing we have left to give. Serena turned and walked back out into the rain, leaving Harlan standing alone in his enormous, empty house, staring at an envelope that would change everything. He didn't open it right away. He couldn't. Instead, he poured himself a scotch, then another, then a third. He paced his study like a caged animal, his eyes drawn again and again to that cream-colored paper sitting on his desk like a bomb waiting to detonate. What could Mara possibly have written that required such ceremony? What secret had she carried for 18 years? No, longer than that. The envelope was old, the wax seal ancient. This wasn't something recent. This was something she'd been holding on to since. Since when? Harlan's hands shook as he finally picked up the envelope. The wax seal broke easily, as if it had been waiting all these years for this exact moment. Inside was a single sheet of paper, covered in Mara's careful cursive. He began to read, and with each word, the world he thought he knew crumbled like sand. What did that letter say that made a grown man's hand shake so badly he dropped his glass? What truth had been hiding in his house all these years, right under his nose? The letter slipped from Harlan's fingers, floating down to the Persian rug like a feather made of dynamite. His brain couldn't process the words, couldn't make them make sense. He read the letter again, then a third time, each pass making his chest tighter, his breathing shallower, his entire reality more unstable. Serena is not just my daughter. She is ours. 5 words. 5 simple words that detonated 24 years of carefully constructed lies. Harlan stumbled backward, his legs hitting the leather chair, and he collapsed into it. The scotch glass that had been in his hand moments before lay shattered on the floor, amber liquid seeping into the expensive rug. He didn't notice, couldn't notice. His entire world had just tilted sideways, and he was falling. The girl with the amber eyes. The one who'd played in his garden as a child. The one who'd helped her mother carry groceries through his back door. The one who'd looked at him with a mixture of respect and something else, something he'd never been able to name, because naming it would have meant acknowledging what it was. Recognition. She'd been looking at him the way children look at absent fathers. And he'd been too blind, too self-absorbed, too wrapped up in his own carefully maintained denial to see it. My daughter, he whispered to the empty room. I have a daughter. The words felt foreign in his mouth, like a language he'd never learned. He'd thought he couldn't have children. The doctors had told him and Catherine that after years of trying, after countless disappointments and medical interventions that led nowhere, they'd accepted it, made peace with it, built a life without the pitter-patter of small feet on marble floors. But that had been a lie, too, not a medical impossibility, just another consequence of choices made in fear and weakness. Harlan's hand shook as he picked up the letter again, reading the parts he'd skipped in his initial shock. Mara's words were measured, careful. But beneath the calm prose, he could hear the echo of pain that had been carried in silence for more than 2 decades. I never told you because back then you were engaged. You said you loved me, and for one moment I believed it. He had loved her. God help him. He had. That summer had been the most alive he'd ever felt. Sneaking moments with a woman who saw past his last name and his bank account to the scared, confused man underneath. Mara had made him laugh, made him feel like maybe, just maybe, he could be someone other than the person his father demanded he become. But then reality crashed in like a cold wave. His father's ultimatum, the merger, Catherine waiting at the altar, the weight of generations of Pierce family expectations pressing down on his chest until he couldn't breathe. So he'd chosen the path of least resistance, the path that kept the peace and maintained the empire and killed the only real thing he'd ever had. You went on with your life, and I went on with mine. The understatement of the century. While he'd married Catherine and built his real estate empire and attended charity galas, Mara had been raising their daughter alone, working as his maid, of all the cruel ironies, coming to his house day after day, cleaning up after him, serving him coffee, all while carrying the secret that the man she served was the father of her child. How had she done it? How had she looked at him every morning and not screamed the truth into his face? The answer was in the letter's final lines. I never asked for help, never wanted your money. I only wanted peace, for her and for me. Dignity. That's how she'd done it. Mara Linton had more dignity in her calloused hands than Harlan had in his entire body. She protected their daughter from the scandal, from the Pierce family's inevitable rejection, from the whispers and judgment that would have followed a revelation like this. And he'd repaid that sacrifice by firing her. The thought made bile rise in his throat. Harlan lurched to his feet, pacing the study like a man possessed. His mind raced through calculations, through implications, through the staggering scope of his own blindness. 24 years. Serena was 24, which meant Mara had been pregnant when he married Catherine. Had she known then? Had she stood in this house, dusting furniture and arranging flowers, watching him prepare for a wedding to another woman while carrying his child? The cruelty of it was suffocating. Harlan stopped at the window, pressing his forehead against the cool glass. Outside, the rain had picked up, turning the manicured lawn into a watercolor painting of grays and greens. Somewhere out there, in a modest apartment across town, his daughter was comforting her mother, the mother he'd just fired, the daughter he'd never acknowledged. What kind of man does that? He knew the answer. A coward. A man so afraid of disrupting his comfortable life that he'd rather pretend the most important thing in his world didn't exist. His father would have been proud. The thought made him laugh, a bitter sound that echoed in the empty study. His father, the man who'd orchestrated this entire mess with his demands and ultimatums and talk of family legacy. Where was that legacy now? Harlan was 49, alone, and just discovering he'd had a daughter all along. Some empire, some legacy. His phone sat on the desk, and for a wild moment, Harlan considered calling Mara. But what would he say? Sorry I fired you? Sorry I abandoned you pregnant 24 years ago? Sorry I've been a complete failure as a human being? No. Phone calls were the coward's way out. He'd spent enough of his life being a coward. Harlan grabbed his car keys. The drive across town felt both endless and too short. Rain hammered the windshield, and Harlan's hands gripped the steering wheel so tight his knuckles went white. He rehearsed speeches in his head, discarding each one as inadequate. What do you say when you've missed your daughter's entire life? When you've been present but absent, there but not there, close enough to touch but whirled away? He had no script for this. No playbook. This wasn't a business negotiation or a property deal. This was his life, raw and messy and real in a way nothing had been real for years. Mara's apartment building appeared through the rain like a judgment. It was modest, well-maintained, but clearly not the kind of place someone with Harlan's resources should have allowed the mother his child to live in. Another weight to add to the crushing pile of his failures. He sat in the car for 5 full minutes, engine running, wipers squeaking against glass. Through a second-floor window, he could see movement, shadows passing back and forth. His daughter was up there. His daughter. The word still felt like a foreign language. Finally, he turned off the engine and stepped out into the rain. He was soaked by the time he reached the front door, but he barely noticed. His finger hovered over the buzzer for apartment 2B. This was it. The moment everything changed or everything ended. No going back from here. He pressed a button. Static crackled through the intercom, then silence. Then a voice he'd heard 1,000 times over 18 years, asking if he wanted sugar in his coffee, saying goodbye at the end of her shifts, humming softly while she worked. "Hello, Mara." His voice came out rough, barely recognizable. "It's Harlan. I read your letter." More silence. He could hear her breathing on the other end, could almost feel her deciding whether to let him up or tell him to leave. He wouldn't blame her for the latter. He deserved the latter. "Second floor," she finally said. The buzzer sounded. The stairs felt like climbing a mountain, each step heavier than the last, weighted with decades of mistakes and mischances. His heart hammered against his ribs, so hard he thought it might break through. At the top, apartment 2B's door stood slightly ajar. He pushed it open. The apartment was small, but immaculate. Photos covered the walls. Serena at various ages, from baby pictures to graduation. A whole life documented in frames. A whole life he'd missed. Mara stood in the center of the living room, arms crossed, her hair down for once, silver streaks catching the dim light. She looked older than he remembered. Not just older, tired. The kind of tired that comes from carrying heavy things alone for too long. "Harlan," she said softly. "Mara." He stood dripping on her welcome mat, suddenly aware of how ridiculous he must look. A wealthy man in an expensive suit, soaked and shaking, coming to her door after all these years. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." She gestured to the couch. "Sit. You're making puddles." He sat. She didn't. She stood by the window, looking out at the rain, and for a long moment neither of them spoke. The silence stretched, filled with all the conversations they'd never had, all the moments they'd carefully avoided, all the truth buried under 18 years of polite distance. "Why didn't you tell me?" Harlan finally asked, his voice cracking. "I would have." "Would have what?" She turned, and her eyes held something he'd never seen before. Not anger, exactly. Something sadder. "Marry me instead? Defied your father? Given up the company?" We both know how that story would have ended. He wanted to argue, wanted to say he would have chosen differently. But she was right. 24 years ago, he'd been weak, controlled by his father's expectations and his own fear of disappointing anyone. He would have tried to have it both ways. Marry Catherine and support Mara secretly. Turn his daughter into a shameful secret, a liability to be managed. Mara would never have accepted that. She had too much pride. "I wanted to tell you," she continued, turning back to the window. "So many times. When Serena took her first steps, I almost called you. When she started school, when she won her first award, when she asked me why she didn't have a father like the other kids." Her voice broke slightly. But what was I supposed to say? That her father was right there, watching her grow up from a distance, pretending she didn't exist. Each word landed like a punch. Harlan felt tears burning behind his eyes, a sensation so foreign he almost didn't recognize it. When was the last time he'd cried? At Catherine's funeral, maybe, or maybe not even then. Maybe he'd forgotten how. "I should have seen it," he whispered. "Her eyes. She has my eyes. She has more than that." Mara smiled slightly, a complicated expression mixing pride and pain. "She has your stubborn streak, your mind for numbers, the way you both get quiet when you're thinking hard about something." She paused. "She's brilliant, Harlan, and kind. Everything you could have been if you'd chosen differently." The accusation hung in the air like smoke. Before Harlan could respond, a door opened down the hall. Serena emerged, dressed in sweatpants and an old college t-shirt, her eyes red from crying. She stopped when she saw him, her entire body going rigid. "What are you doing here?" Her voice was flat, empty of everything except exhaustion. Harlan stood, suddenly uncertain. I read the letter. I needed to. Needed to what?" Serena cut him off. "Apologize? Make yourself feel better? Write a check and pretend that fixes everything." "Serena," Mara started, but her daughter held up a hand. "No, Mom. He doesn't get to do this. He doesn't get to waltz in here after a lifetime of nothing and expect us to just..." "What? Forgive him? Welcome him with open arms." She turned to Harlan, and the pain in her eyes was devastating. You had 18 years to figure it out. 18 years of watching me grow up in your house. And it took getting fired from Mom to finally force the truth on you. She was right. God, she was so right. Harlan felt his throat close up, words failing him completely. What could he possibly say that would make any of this better? I don't expect forgiveness, he managed finally. I don't expect anything. I needed you to know that I didn't know. And now that I do, I can't pretend anymore. I can't go back to how things were. Neither can we, Serena said quietly. She looked at her mother, then back at him. You fired her, Mr. Pierce. You looked at the woman who gave you a daughter, who kept your secret for 24 years, who protected you from scandal, and you threw her away like garbage. What kind of man does that to someone they supposedly care about? The question hung between them, unanswerable because they all knew the answer. A weak man, a selfish man, a man so trapped in his own fear and pride that he couldn't see the most important things right in front of his face. But here's what shocked everyone in that small apartment, including Harlan himself. For the first time in his adult life, he did something that wasn't calculated or strategic or designed to protect himself. He told the truth. A coward, Harlan said, his voice breaking. The kind of man who spent his whole life running from anything real, because real things require courage, and I've never had any. Your mother was the bravest person I ever knew. She still is. And he looked at Serena, really looked at her, seeing for the first time all the ways she was his and all the ways she was better than him. You deserved a father who showed up. I'm sorry I wasn't him. The room went silent, except for the rain against the windows and the sound of 3 people breathing. Serena's expression shifted, anger cracking just slightly to reveal something vulnerable underneath. I don't know if sorry is enough, she said softly. It's not, Harlan agreed, but it's a start. Mara moved then, crossing to stand beside her daughter. She put a hand on Serena's shoulder, and the gesture was so simple, so full of years of protection and support, that Harlan felt his heart crack clean through. What do you want from us? Mara asked, her voice measured. Really, not the speech you practiced in the car. What do you actually want? What did he want? The question echoed in Harlan's mind, and he realized he didn't have a prepared answer. For once, he had to dig deeper than strategy, past the scripts and negotiations, down to something raw and honest. I want to know her, he said, looking at Serena. I want to understand what I missed. His voice broke. I want to stop being the man my father raised you to be and start being the man you both deserved all along, even if it's too late. Even if you tell me to leave right now and never come back. I want to try. Serena's eyes filled with tears, and for a moment, Harlan saw the little girl she'd been, the one playing in his garden while he worked in his study, completely unaware, the one who'd looked at him with something like hope before learning to hide it. But he also saw the woman she'd become, strong, principled, unafraid to call out injustice, even when it cost her. She'd gotten that from Mara, and maybe, if he was very lucky, a tiny piece from him too. I need time, Serena finally said. We both do. This isn't something you can fix with one conversation. I know, and I need you to prove this isn't just guilt talking, that you actually mean it. I will. She studied him for a long moment, and Harlan felt like he was being judged by a jury of one. Finally, she nodded. Okay, but we do this slow, on our terms. Relief flooded through him, so powerfully his knees almost buckled. Thank you. Mara walked him to the door a few minutes later, leaving Serena in the living room. At the threshold, she stopped him with a hand on his arm. Don't hurt her again, she said quietly. I protected her from you once. I'll do it again if I have to. I won't, Harlan promised. Then, because he had to say it, I'm sorry for all of it, for then, for now, for every day in between. Something soft flickered across Mara's face. I know you are. That's why I'm giving you this chance. She paused. But Harlan? Sorry doesn't erase the past. It just gives us permission to build something different in the future. He nodded, not trusting himself to speak. As he walked back down the stairs and out into the rain, Harlan felt something he hadn't felt in years. Hope. But hope is a fragile thing, and the path from stranger to father is longer and harder than any man can imagine. The question was, did Harlan Pierce have what it took to walk it? He was about to find out. 3 weeks can feel like 3 years when you're learning how to be a father at 49. Harlan started small. Too small, maybe. The first weekend, he showed up at Mara's apartment with takeout from a local diner, the kind of gesture that felt safe and non-threatening. Serena answered the door in painting clothes, her hair tied back, wherein is written across her face like a warning sign. "You came," she said, and he couldn't tell if she was surprised or disappointed. "I said I would." She stepped aside to let him in, and they ate dinner in uncomfortable silence punctuated by stilted attempts at conversation. Harlan asked about her studies in architecture. She gave short, polite answers. He asked about her favorite buildings. She described a Frank Lloyd Wright house she'd visited in Chicago, her voice warming slightly when she talked about the way natural light transformed spaces. It wasn't much, but it was something. The second weekend, he brought Chinese food and asked if she'd show him some of her design work. Serena hesitated, then pulled out her laptop. For an hour, Harlan sat beside his daughter, looking at her architectural renderings, listening to her explain load-bearing walls and sustainable materials and her vision for affordable housing that didn't sacrifice beauty for budget. "You're brilliant," he said when she finished, and meant it. She looked at him, searching for sarcasm or empty flattery. Finding neither, she said quietly, "Mom always told me I got my head for numbers from somewhere." The third weekend, something shifted. Serena was waiting outside when he pulled up, and instead of inviting him in, she suggested they go for a walk. They ended up at a coffee shop 3 blocks away, sitting by a window streaked with November rain. "I Googled you," Serena said abruptly, stirring sugar into her latte. Harlan's stomach dropped. "Okay, there's a lot out there. Articles about your business, photos from galas, that lawsuit from 2019. She looked up at him. "You've had an interesting life." "Interesting. That's one word for it. Complicated is another." She took a sip of her drink. "I kept looking for mentions of a daughter. Obviously found nothing. But there were articles about you and Catherine. How you two were this power couple. How devastated you were when she died." He heard the question underneath. "Were you? Really? Or was that just another performance?" "I was devastated," Harlan said carefully. "Catherine was a good woman. She didn't deserve the hand she was dealt. But—" he struggled for words that wouldn't sound like betrayal. "Our marriage was built on practical things. Mutual respect. Shared goals. It worked until it didn't. Did she know? About Mom?" The question he'd been dreading. Harlan took a breath. "No, I never told her." Another failure on a long list. Serena nodded slowly, processing. "Did you love her?" "I cared about her deeply. But love—" He looked out at the rain. "I'm not sure I knew what love was back then. I confused it with obligation, with duty, with maintaining appearances. Real love requires vulnerability, and I was too scared for that." "Are you still scared?" He turned back to find her watching him with those amber eyes that were so much like his own. The honest answer was yes. Terrified. Every conversation with her felt like walking across ice that might crack at any moment. But honesty was all he had now. "Yes," he said, "but I'm trying anyway." Something in Serena's expression softened slightly. Not forgiveness. Exactly. More like the beginning of understanding. "That's something, I guess." They talked for 2 hours. Harlan learned that Serena had been designing tiny homes as a passion project, that she'd been accepted to graduate programs at 3 universities but was hesitating because of money, that her favorite movie was Inception and she'd watched it 17 times, that she was terrible at cooking but made incredible chocolate chip cookies. Small things. Normal things. The kind of things fathers know about their daughters because they've been there all along. For Harlan, each fact felt precious, like collecting pieces of a puzzle he should have completed years ago. When they walked back to the apartment, Serena paused at the door. "Same time next week?" Relief flooded through him. "I'd like that. Bring Italian. Mom's been craving it." It was the first time she'd included Mara in their plans without prompting. Progress, Harlan thought. Slow, painful progress. But progress had a way of revealing complications. The next week, when Harlan arrived with lasagna and breadsticks, he found Mara in the kitchen, looking exhausted. Dark circles shadowed her eyes, and she moved with a carefulness that suggested pain she wasn't acknowledging. "Are you all right?" he asked. "Fine," she said automatically. Then, catching his look, "Just tired. I picked up extra shifts at the hotel." "Hotel?" "Downtown Marriott. Housekeeping." She said it matter-of-factly, but Harlan felt the words like a slap. After 18 years of working for him, Mara was cleaning hotel rooms because he'd fired her, because his 3-month severance was running out and bills didn't stop coming. Shame burned through him. "Mara, let me help. I can—" "No." Her voice was firm. "We're not doing that. I don't want your guilt money. It's not guilt money. It's what I should have been doing all along. Let me pay for Serena's graduate school. Let me—" "Stop." Mara set down the dish she'd been drying. "Harlan, I appreciate what you're trying to do, but I've supported us for 24 years. I don't need rescuing now. I'm not trying to rescue you. I'm trying to make up for her. You can't." She said it gently but firmly. "You can't pay your way out of the past. That's not how this works." Serena appeared in the doorway then, sensing the tension. "Everything okay?" Mara forced a smile. "Everything's fine. Dinner's getting cold." They ate, but the easy rhythm they'd been building felt fractured. Harlan watched Mara push food around her plate, noticed the way she winced when she reached for the water pitcher, and felt his frustration grow. This was wrong. He had resources. He had money. Why wouldn't she let him help? After dinner, Serena excused herself to finish an assignment, leaving Harlan and Mara alone with the dishes. For several minutes, they worked in silence, the only sound the clink of plates and running water. "I'm not trying to insult you," Harlan finally said. "I know you're capable. I know you've done everything on your own. But you shouldn't have had to." Mara's hand stilled in the soapy water. "You're right. I shouldn't have. But I did. And that made me strong. It made Serena strong. I'm not ashamed of how we survived. I'm not asking you to be ashamed. I'm asking you to let me be part of this. Part of her life. Part of—" He trailed off. "Part of mine?" Mara turned to face him, water dripping from her hands. "Is that what this is about? You think helping financially will give you some claim to us?" "No. God, no. I just—" Harlan struggled for the right words. "I just want to do something right for once. I've made so many mistakes. Let me fix this one thing." Mara studied him for a long moment, and Harlan felt exposed in a way he hadn't since he was young. "You can't fix the past by throwing money at the present," she said softly. "That's not what we need from you." "Then what do you need?" "Time. Consistency. Showing up not just when it's convenient, but when it's hard. Proving that you're not going to disappear again when things get complicated." She dried her hands slowly. "Money is easy, Harlan. Everything else requires actual courage." The words hit home because they were true. Writing a check would let him feel like he'd done something, without actually doing the hard work of building a relationship. It was another form of running away, just dressed up as generosity. "You're right," he admitted. "I'm sorry. I'm trying to figure out how to do this, and I keep getting it wrong." "You will get it wrong. A lot." Mara's expression softened slightly. "That's part of being a parent. The difference is whether you keep trying after you mess up." The conversation stuck with Harlan for days. He found himself thinking about it during meetings, while reviewing contracts, in the middle of the night when sleep wouldn't come. He'd spent his whole life believing money could solve problems, smooth over difficulties, make up for absence. Now he was learning that the things that mattered most couldn't be bought. The following Saturday, he showed up without food or gifts, just himself. "I thought we could just talk," he told Serena when she answered the door looking confused. "If that's okay." They sat on the couch. Mara joined them with tea. And for the first time, Harlan asked questions that weren't safe or surface level. He asked about the hard years, about times Serena had felt his absence, about what it was like growing up without a father, while watching other kids get picked up from school by theirs. Serena's answers were honest and painful. She described Father's Day projects at school, where she made cards for her grandfather who lived 3 states away. Birthday parties where friends asked why her dad wasn't there. A school dance in 8th grade where all the other girls had fathers taking pictures while Mara snapped photos alone, trying to be enough for both parents. "I used to make up stories about you," Serena admitted quietly. "I'd tell kids my dad was a pilot who was always traveling, or a doctor doing important research overseas. Anything that sounded better than 'I don't know who he is.'" Each word cut deep, but Harlan forced himself to listen without defending or explaining. This wasn't about making himself feel better. It was about finally hearing what his absence had cost. "I'm sorry," he said when she finished, and the words felt completely inadequate. "I'm so sorry I wasn't there for any of that." "The thing is," Serena said, wiping her eyes, "I had a good childhood. Mom made sure of it. We didn't have much money, but we had each other. She worked 2 jobs sometimes, but she never missed a school play or soccer game. She was enough." She paused, but there was always this space, this absence shaped like a father. "And now you're here, trying to fill it, and I don't know how to let you." "You don't have to let me do anything," Harlan said. "We can just be here, figure out as we go." Mara reached over and squeezed Serena's hand. The gesture was so natural, so full of years of comfort and support, that Harlan felt the weight of everything he'd missed crash over him again. "Can I ask you something?" Serena said, looking at Harlan with an intensity that made him nervous. "If you could go back, know what you know now, would you have chosen differently?" The question hung in the air like a test. He could either pass or fail spectacularly. Harlan thought about lying, about giving the answer that would make everyone feel better. But hadn't he done enough of that for one lifetime? "Yes," he said honestly. "I would have chosen your mother. I would have defied my father, walked away from the company, whatever it took. But that's easy to say now, knowing you exist. Back then, I was weak and scared and too worried about disappointing people who didn't matter nearly as much as I thought they did." He turned to Mara. "I would have fought for you. I should have fought for you. Instead, I took the coward's way out and convinced myself it was a noble choice, that I was protecting you from scandal, from my family's judgment. But really, I was just protecting myself." Mara's eyes glistened. "Harlan, I can't change the past," he continued. "But I can promise you both that I'm done running. Whatever happens next, I'm here for all of it." The silence that followed felt different from the uncomfortable quiet of earlier weeks. This was a silence of something settling into place. Not healed, not fixed, but acknowledged. Truth had that effect sometimes. Serena stood abruptly. "I need to show you something." She disappeared down the hall, returning with a large portfolio. Inside were architectural drawings, but not the ones she'd shown him before. These were older, done on cheaper paper with markers and colored pencils instead of computer software. "I designed these when I was 14, she explained, spreading them out on the coffee table. "See this building? It's based on your house, the one where Mom worked." Harlan leaned forward. The drawing showed a grand building transformed into a community center. The study where he'd fired Mara had become a library. The formal dining room was a communal kitchen. The master bedroom was office space for a nonprofit. "I used to imagine buying your house someday," Serena said quietly, "turning it into something that actually helped people instead of just sitting there as a monument to wealth. It was my revenge fantasy, I guess." Harlan studied the drawings, seeing his home through his daughter's eyes, not as a treasure but as a waste. "It's brilliant," he said. "Completely brilliant." "Yeah, well," Serena gathered up the papers. "It's never going to happen. That house is worth millions." An idea began forming in Harlan's mind. A crazy, impulsive, potentially stupid idea. But for the first time in decades, he felt like maybe crazy and impulsive wasn't the worst way to be. "What if it did happen?" he said slowly. Both women looked at him. What? Mara asked, what if we actually did this? Turn the house into something meaningful. Serena shook her head. That's not realistic. The permits alone would cost. I own the house. I have the resources. Harlan felt momentum building. The same rush he got during a good business deal, but different somehow. Better. What if this was how I helped? Not by throwing money at you, but by giving you the tools to do something incredible. You're talking about donating a multi-million-dollar property. Mara said carefully. That's not a small thing. No, it's not. But what am I doing with it? Rattling around in empty rooms, working myself to death for a legacy that means nothing. He looked at Serena. You said I could have been something different if I'd chosen better. Maybe it's not too late. Serena's expression cycled through disbelief, hope, and caution. You're serious. I'm serious. You just give up your house? It's not giving up. It's finally using it for something that matters. He paused. But only if you want to. This is your dream. I'm just offering to help make it reality. Mother and daughter exchanged a long look, having one of those silent conversations that people who've been through everything together can have. Finally, Serena turned back to him. I'll need to see the house again. Get measurements. Talk to contractors. Whenever you want. It's your project. Our project, Serena corrected. If we're doing this, we're doing it together. The word together hit Harlan harder than he expected. For 24 years, his daughter had done everything without him. Now she was offering him a place in her world, in her dream. He didn't deserve it, but he'd be damned if he wasted it. Together, he agreed. As Harlan drove home that night, rain tapping against his windshield, he felt something he hadn't felt in years. Purpose. Not the hollow purpose of closing deals and accumulating wealth, but real purpose. The kind that comes from finally doing something that matters. But transforming a house was the easy part. Transforming himself, that was going to take everything he had. And some battles he was about to discover required more than good intentions and deep pockets. Some battles required facing the ghosts he'd spent a lifetime running from. The doorbell rang at 6:30 on a Tuesday morning, shattering the quiet Harlan had been enjoying with his coffee and newspaper. He wasn't expecting anyone. Contractors weren't scheduled until Thursday. Serena and Mara had their own keys now, a gesture he'd made 2 weeks prior that felt both terrifying and right. So, who the hell was ringing his doorbell before sunrise? He opened the door to find his younger brother, Marcus, standing on the porch in a business suit that probably cost more than most people's monthly rent. We need to talk, Marcus said, pushing past him into the foyer without waiting for an invitation. Harlan sighed. He'd known this was coming, had been dreading it. Actually, Marcus was a lawyer, a board member of the Pierce Family Trust, and their father's favorite child, which many had strong opinions about what people should and shouldn't do with Pierce family assets. Good morning to you, too, Harlan said, closing the door. Coffee. This isn't a social call. Marcus paced the foyer like a caged animal. I heard about your plan. The house. Please tell me the rumors are wrong. Depends on what you heard. That you're planning to donate this property, prime real estate worth at least $8 million, to some community center project. That you're working with people. His phone rang. His attorney, Richard Chun, sounded tired even to the phone line. You got the papers? Just arrived. This is insane, Richard. They can't actually claim I'm incompetent. They can claim whatever they want. Whether it'll stick is another question. Papers rustled in the background. But Harlan, I need be honest. This complicates things. If there's any chance a judge thinks you're making decisions under duress or undue influence, I'm not. This is my choice. Your choice to give away an $8 million property to a woman claiming to be your daughter without a paternity test. A woman who worked for you, who you just fired, and who conveniently revealed this information after losing her job. Richard sighed. Harlan, I'm your attorney. I'm on your side, but I'm telling you how this looks to a judge. So what do you suggest? Honestly, do the paternity test. Get it in writing. Remove any doubt about Serena's parentage. It takes away their biggest argument. And what message does it send Serena? To Mara? That I don't trust them? It sends a message that you're protecting everyone's interests, including theirs. Look, if she's really your daughter, the test proves it and we move forward. If she's not, Richard trailed off. She is. Then prove it. Not for me, not for your family, but for Serena. Give her documentation that no one can dispute. Make her legally recognized as your daughter with all the rights that entails. That's not distrust, Harlan. That's protection. The argument made sense, even if Harlan hated it. He'd been thinking about the test as a sign of doubt, but Richard was right. It could be a form of security. Documentation that no one, including Marcus, could challenge. I'll talk to them, Harlan said finally. But I'm not forcing anything. It's their choice. Fair enough. But Harlan, do it soon. Your family is circling and they have expensive lawyers. We need to be ready. After hanging up, Harlan sat in silence, staring at the legal papers. 24 years of avoiding consequences, and now they were crashing down all at once. Part of him wanted to fight his family's challenge out of pure stubbornness. But Richard was right. This wasn't about his pride. It was about protecting Serena. He called Mara. She answered on the third ring, and he could hear hotel sounds in the background. She was at work. Harlan, is everything okay? Not exactly. Can we talk? I can come to you, or meet you somewhere after your shift. A pause. That's serious? Yeah. My break is in an hour. There's a diner 2 blocks from the hotel. Angelo's. I'll be there. Angelo's diner was exactly what it sounded like. Vinyl booths, checker floors, and a laminated menu that hadn't changed since 1985. Mara sat in a back booth, still in her work uniform, a cup of coffee cooling in front of her. She looked exhausted, not just tired from work, but the kind of exhaustion that seeps into your bones when you've been fighting too long. What's wrong? She asked as he slid into the booth. Harlan put the legal papers on the table. My family is challenging the house donation. They're claiming I'm not of sound mind, that I'm being manipulated. Mara's face paled. Manipulated by who? Take a guess. She closed her eyes. Of course, we're the gold diggers who showed up to take advantage of the lonely widower. That's the basic argument, yeah. Harlan reached across the table, then stopped, not sure if the gesture would be welcome. My attorney suggested something, a paternity test. Not because I doubt Serena is mine, but because legal documentation would end any challenge to her status. It would protect her. Protect you. You want proof. Her voice was flat. I want protection. There's a difference. Is there? Mara looked up, and her eyes held old pain resurfacing. All these years, I kept that secret to protect her. To protect you, honestly. And now you want me to prove something that shouldn't need proving. I know it feels like you don't trust me? Like after everything, you think I might be lying? She laughed bitterly. 24 years, Harlan. 24 years I could have come forward. Could have demanded child support, recognition, money. I didn't. Not once. And now you want to test. My family is coming after us with lawyers and money and legal challenges. They're going to make this ugly. A paternity test removes their ammunition. He leaned forward. Mara, please. I believe you, but this isn't about belief. It's about making sure no one can ever question Serena's right to be recognized as my daughter. She was quiet for a long time, stirring her coffee without drinking it. Finally, she said, I need to talk to Serena. This affects her more than anyone. Of course. I can explain it to her if you want. Tell her why. No, I'll tell her. Mara stood, gathering her things. But Harlan, if we do this, if we open up our lives to that kind of scrutiny, your family better be prepared for what they find. Because Serena has been just fine without the Pierce name. Maybe they're the ones who should prove they deserve to be part of her life. She left before he could respond, the diner door chiming behind her. Harlan sat alone in the booth, his coffee going cold, wondering how everything had gotten so complicated so fast. 2 months ago, his life had been simple, empty but simple. Now he was fighting his own family for the right to acknowledge his daughter. Progress, he thought grimly, sometimes felt a lot like destruction. That evening his phone rang. Serena, Mom told me about the test. She said without preamble, "Your family is really doing this?" "I'm afraid so." "I'm sorry, Serena. I never wanted." "Stop apologizing. I'm not a kid. I get that rich families have drama." She sighed. "The question is, do you actually want this test? Or is this just about making them shut up?" "Honestly, both. I want legal documentation that you're my daughter. Not because I doubt it, but because I want official. I want your birth certificate amended. I want you to have every right that comes with being a Pierce, including the right to tell my brother to go to hell." She laughed despite herself. "That's tempting. So is that a yes?" "It's a yes, but on one condition." Her voice turned serious. "When the results come back, because we both know what they'll say, you introduce me to your family properly, not as the maid's daughter or the surprise heir or whatever they're calling me, as your daughter, period, with no development experience, that you've lost your damn mind." Harlan took a slow sip of his coffee. "The rumors are mostly right, except for the last part. I'm perfectly sane." "Are you?" Marcus's voice rose. "You're throwing away millions. For what? Some feel-good project that'll probably fail in 5 years? Dad would be rolling in his grave. Dad's been dead for 12 years. He doesn't get a vote anymore. The family does. The trust does. You can't just give away assets without." "Actually, I can." Harlan set down his mug with deliberate calm. "This property is mine outright. No trust involvement. I checked with my attorney." Marcus's jaw clenched. "Fine. Legally, maybe you can. But morally? Harlan, this house has been in our family for 40 years. You're just going to hand it over to strangers." "She's not a stranger." "Who?" The moment of truth. Harlan had been avoiding this conversation, but there was no more hiding. Not if he wanted to move forward with the project. Not if he wanted to actually be part of his daughter's life, instead of keeping her hidden like a shameful secret. Serena Linton, the architect designing the community center. She's my daughter. The words hung in the air like a grenade with the pin pulled. Marcus froze mid-pace, his expression cycling to confusion, disbelief, and then something harder. "You're what?" "My daughter, with Mara, the woman who worked here for 18 years. The maid?" Marcus's voice dripped with disgust. "You're telling me you had an affair with the help? Got her pregnant. And now you're giving away an $8 million property to cover it up?" "I'm not covering anything up. I'm trying to make things right. 24 years later? That's convenient." Marcus laughed bitterly. "Let me guess. She found out who her father was, and suddenly you're feeling generous. How much is she asking for? Because whatever it is, paying her off will be cheaper than this insanity." Rage flared hot in Harlan's chest. "Watch your mouth. This isn't about money. This is about my daughter. Your alleged daughter. Have you even done a paternity test?" The question hit like a slap. Harlan hadn't done a test because he didn't need one. He saw himself in Serena's eyes, in the way she thought, in the stubbornness of her jaw when she was angry. But more than that, he trusted Mara. She'd never lied to him, not once in all these years. "I don't need a test," Harlan said quietly. "She's mine. I know it." "Oh, you know it?" Marcus's voice was heavy with sarcasm. "Well, that's scientific. Harlan, listen to yourself. Some woman you had a fling with decades ago shows up with a grown daughter and a convenience story, and you're just accepting it? Where's the man who built a real estate empire on due diligence and smart decisions? That man missed his daughter's entire childhood because he was too much of a coward to face the truth. I'm done being that man." Marcus shook his head slowly. "You're being played, and you're too blinded by guilt to see it. This Mara or Serena or whatever her name is, she's smart. She waited until you were vulnerable, until Catherine was gone and you were alone, and then she dropped this bomb. And now you're giving her millions because you feel bad. That's not what's happening. Isn't it? Come on, Harlan. You fired this woman, and suddenly her daughter appears with a letter claiming you're her father? That's not suspicious to you. Doubt flickered in Harlan's mind for just a second, not about Serena being his daughter, that he knew in his bones, but about the timing. Had Mara kept a secret all these years specifically for leverage? Had she waited until the perfect moment to reveal it? No. He'd seen the pain in Mara's eyes when she talked about those years. Heard the truth in Serena's voice when she described growing up without a father. This wasn't a con. This was consequences finally catching up to him. You didn't know them, Harlan said firmly. You didn't see Mara work here for 18 years without asking for anything. You didn't watch Serena grow up in the shadows while I was too blind to see her. This isn't a scam, Marcus. This is me finally doing the right thing. The right thing would be protecting the family's assets. Dad built this empire for us, for his grandchildren. Marcus stopped abruptly, a new realization crossing his face. Oh my God! Grandchildren. Does this girl expect inheritance rights? Is she planning to challenge Catherine's estate? Serena doesn't want my money. She never asked for a dime. Of course she didn't. That's how good cons work. They let you offer. Marcus ran a hand through his hair. Harlan, please. I'm begging you. Slow down. Do the paternity test. Get a proper legal agreement in place. Protect yourself before you do something you can't undo. I don't want to undo it. For the first time in years, I'm doing something that actually matters. His phone rang. His attorney, Richard Chun, sounded tired even to the phone line. You got the papers? Just arrived. This is insane, Richard. They can't actually claim I'm incompetent. They can claim whatever they want. Whether it'll stick is another question. Papers rustled in the background. But Harlan, I need be honest. This complicates things. If there's any chance a judge thinks you're making decisions under duress or undue influence, I'm not. This is my choice. Your choice to give away an $8 million property to a woman claiming to be your daughter without a paternity test. A woman who worked for you, who you just fired, and who conveniently revealed this information after losing her job. Richard sighed. Harlan, I'm your attorney. I'm on your side, but I'm telling you how this looks to a judge. So what do you suggest? Honestly, do the paternity test. Get it in writing. Remove any doubt about Serena's parentage. It takes away their biggest argument. And what message does it send to Serena? To Mara? That I don't trust them. It sends a message that you're protecting everyone's interests, including theirs. Look, if she's really your daughter, the test proves it and we move forward. If she's not, Richard trailed off. She is. Then prove it. Not for me, not for your family, but for Serena. Give her documentation that no one can dispute. Make her legally recognized as your daughter with all the rights that entails. That's not distrust, Harlan. That's protection. The argument made sense, even if Harlan hated it. He'd been thinking about the test as a sign of doubt, but Richard was right. It could be a form of security. Documentation that no one, including Marcus, could challenge. I'll talk to them, Harlan said finally. But I'm not forcing anything. It's their choice. Fair enough. But Harlan, do it soon. Your family is circling, and they have expensive lawyers. We need to be ready. After hanging up, Harlan sat in silence, staring at the legal papers. 24 years of avoiding consequences, and now they were crashing down all at once. Part of him wanted to fight his family's challenge out of pure stubbornness. But Richard was right. This wasn't about his pride. It was about protecting Serena. He called Mara. She answered on the third ring, and he could hear hotel sounds in the background. She was at work. Harlan, is everything okay? Not exactly. Can we talk? I can come to you or meet you somewhere after your shift. A pause. That's serious? Yeah. My break is in an hour. There's a diner 2 blocks from the hotel. Angelo's. I'll be there. Angelo's diner was exactly what it sounded like. Vinyl booths, checkered floors, and a laminated menu that hadn't changed since 1985. Mara sat in a back booth, still in her work uniform, a cup of coffee cooling in front of her. She looked exhausted, not just tired from work, but the kind of exhaustion that seeps into your bones when you've been fighting too long. "What's wrong?" she asked as he slid into the booth. Harlan put the legal papers on the table. "My family is challenging the house donation. They're claiming I'm not of sound mind, that I'm being manipulated." Mara's face paled. "Manipulated by who? Take a guess." She closed her eyes. "Of course, we're the gold diggers who showed up to take advantage of the lonely widower. That's the basic argument, yeah." Harlan reached across the table, then stopped, not sure if the gesture would be welcome. "My attorney suggested something, a paternity test. Not because I doubt Serena is mine, but because legal documentation would end any challenge to her status. It would protect her. Protect you. You want proof." Her voice was flat. "I want protection. There's a difference." "Is there?" Mara looked up, and her eyes held old pain resurfacing. "All these years, I kept that secret to protect her. To protect you, honestly. And now you want me to prove something that shouldn't need proving. I know it feels like you don't trust me? Like after everything. You think I might be lying?" She laughed bitterly. 24 years, Harlan. 24 years I could have come forward. Could have demanded child support, recognition, money. I didn't. Not once. And now you want a test. My family is coming after us with lawyers and money and legal challenges. They're going to make this ugly. A paternity test removes their ammunition. He leaned forward. "Mara, please. I believe you, but this isn't about belief. It's about making sure no one can ever question Serena's right to be recognized as my daughter." She was quiet for a long time, stirring her coffee without drinking it. Finally, she said, "I need to talk to Serena. This affects her more than anyone." "Of course. I can explain it to her, if you want. Tell her why." "No, I'll tell her." Mara stood, gathering her things. "But Harlan, if we do this, if we open up our lives to that kind of scrutiny, your family better be prepared for what they find. Because Serena has been just fine without the Pierce name. Maybe they're the ones who should prove they deserve to be part of her life." She left before he could respond, the diner door chiming behind her. Harlan sat alone in the booth, his coffee going cold, wondering how everything had gotten so complicated so fast. 2 months ago, his life had been simple, empty but simple. Now he was fighting his own family for the right to acknowledge his daughter. Progress. He thought grimly, sometimes felt a lot like destruction. That evening his phone rang. "Serena, Mom told me about the test," she said without preamble. "Your family is really doing this?" "I'm afraid so. I'm sorry, Serena. I never wanted." "Stop apologizing. I'm not a kid. I get that rich families have drama." She sighed. "The question is, do you actually want this test? Or is this just about making them shut up?" "Honestly, both. I want legal documentation that you're my daughter, not because I doubt it, but because I want it official. I want your birth certificate amended. I want you to have every right that comes with being a Pierce, including the right to tell my brother to go to hell." She laughed despite herself. "That's tempting. So is that a yes?" "It's a yes, but on one condition." Her voice turned serious. "When the results come back, because we both know what they'll say, you introduce me to your family properly, not as the maid's daughter or the surprise heir or whatever they're calling me, as your daughter. Period." The confession hung in Eleanor Pierce's living room like smoke after a gunshot. "I have a daughter." 3 words. Simple words. But they detonated in that room full of Pierces like Harlan had just announced he was giving away the family fortune to a cult, which, judging by the looks on their faces, might have been more acceptable. His mother's expression didn't change. She sat perfectly still in her chair, the one she commanded from for decades, her hands folded in her lap like she was posing for a portrait. But Harlan saw the slight tightening around her eyes, the barely perceptible shift in her posture. Eleanor Pierce had built a career on controlling her reactions. She wasn't about to lose that control now. Marcus, on the other hand, had no such restraint. "You're admitting it?" Just like that. "I'm not admitting anything. I'm stating a fact. Serena Linton is my daughter. She was born 24 years ago, and I didn't know about her until recently. Convenient, Rachel muttered from the couch. Very convenient timing. Diana, his sister, leaned forward. She'd always been the quieter Pierce, more interested in her art gallery than family drama. But her eyes were sharp now, calculating. The maid's daughter, Mara's daughter. That's who we're talking about, right? Her name is Serena. And yes, Mara's her mother. The woman you just fired. Diana's tone made it a statement, not a question, which I now realize was a mistake. One of many. Eleanor finally spoke, her voice measured and cold. Explain. From the beginning. Leave nothing out. So Harlan told them. About the summer before his wedding to Catherine. About falling in love with Mara, and then choosing duty over heart, because his father demanded it. About firing Mara weeks ago, without knowing the truth. About Serena showing up with the letter that changed everything. He left out the parts that were too personal. The way his heart had cracked open reading Mara's words. The feeling of meeting his daughter for the first time. The desperate hope that maybe, just maybe, he could build something real from the wreckage of his choices. His family didn't need those details. They wouldn't understand them anyway. When he finished, silence stretched for what felt like hours, but was probably 30 seconds. His nephew Tommy, 16 and bored, broke it first. So we have a cousin we didn't know about? That's kind of cool. It's not cool, Marcus snapped. It's a disaster. Do you know what this does to the family reputation? To Dad's legacy? Dad's been dead for 12 years, Harlan said quietly. His legacy will survive. Will it? When people find out you had a secret child with the help, that you're now giving away family property to her. Marcus stood, pacing like he had too much energy to contain. This makes us look weak. Like we can't control our own family. Control? Harlan felt anger rising. That's what matters to you? Control? It's what should matter to you too. But apparently, you've forgotten everything Dad taught us about protecting the Pierce name. Maybe I'm tired of protecting a name at the expense of actual people. Eleanor raised one hand, and everyone fell silent. The woman had that effect. Decades of commanding boardrooms and family dinners had given her an authority that transcended words. Harlan, she said carefully, I understand you're feeling emotional about this situation, but emotion cannot dictate decisions that affect the entire family. You're claiming this girl is your daughter based on a letter from a woman who worked for you, a woman with every reason to see opportunity in your current circumstances. She's not lying. How do you know? Have you done a paternity test? We're doing one next week, but I don't need a test to know the truth. Then you're a fool. Eleanor's voice stayed calm, but the words cut deep. Your father and I raised you to think critically, to verify before trusting. This woman kept this alleged daughter secret for 24 years. Never asked for support, never made demands. And suddenly, right after you fire her, this revelation appears? You don't find that suspicious. I find it sad, Harlan said. Sad that Mara felt she had to protect her daughter from this family. From the judgment I'm seeing right now. Diana spoke up again. We're not judging the girl. We're being practical. If she's your daughter. And that's a big if until the test comes back. Then we need to handle this carefully. Quietly. There are ways to support a child without broadcasting it to the world. Trust funds, education accounts, quiet family acknowledgement. But donating an $8 million property? That's not support, Harlan. That's guilt. Maybe it's both. Then deal with your guilt in therapy, not by destroying family assets. Marcus pulled out his phone. I had our attorney draw up an alternative proposal. We set up a trust for Serena. If the paternity test confirms she's yours, she gets a reasonable sum. Say, $2 million. Enough to be generous without being reckless. The house stays in the family. You get to feel like a hero. Everyone wins. Except Serena doesn't want money. She wants to build something meaningful. Then she can build it with her trust fund. Problem solved. Harlan looked around the room at his family, at faces he'd known his entire life. Faces that looked at him with varying degrees of concern, frustration, and disappointment. They weren't evil people. They weren't trying to hurt him. They genuinely believed they were protecting the family from a mistake, but they were wrong. The house project is happening, Harlan said firmly, with or without your support. I'm not asking permission. I'm informing you out of courtesy. Eleanor's eyes narrowed. You're making an enemy of this family over a girl you've known for 2 months. I'm making a choice I should have made 24 years ago. Better late than never. Is it? His mother stood slowly, her movements deliberate. Better late than never assumes the outcome is positive. But what if you're wrong? What if this girl is manipulating you, and you're too blinded by guilt to see it? What if, a year from now, the house project fails, she disappears, and you're left with nothing but regret and an empty bank account? The scenario painted a picture Harlan had considered in his darkest moments. What if he was wrong? What if his family was right, and he was being played by someone who'd studied his weaknesses and exploited them perfectly? But then he remembered Serena's face when she talked about her architectural designs, the way Mara had refused his money even when she clearly needed it, the years of silence that could have been years of demands if this were really about exploitation. Then I'll live with it, Harlan said. I'd rather be wrong trying to do the right thing than be right doing nothing. Marcus threw up his hands. You're impossible. You know that? Completely impossible. Boys, Eleanor said sharply. She turned to Harlan. I won't support this. Neither will most of the family. But we also won't fight you publicly. Family disputes stay private. Do your test. Move forward with your project, if you insist. But don't expect us at the ribbon cutting. It wasn't acceptance, but it wasn't total war either. Harlan would take it. Thank you, Mother. She nodded once, then left the room. The rest of the family filtered out behind her, some shooting him sympathetic looks, others avoiding his eyes entirely. Marcus was last, pausing at the door. You know what really bothers me? His brother said quietly. It's not the money. It's that you're choosing them over us. Over me. We're blood. Harlan. Serena might be blood too, but she's a stranger, and you're throwing away 49 years of family for her. I'm not throwing anything away. I'm trying to expand what family means. That's a nice way of saying you're abandoning us. Marcus left before Harlan could respond. And maybe that was for the best, because Harlan wasn't sure what to say. His brother wasn't entirely wrong. He was choosing Serena and Mara over his birth family's comfort and expectations. He was disrupting decades of Pierce's family dynamics for people who'd only recently entered his life as anything more than background characters. But didn't he owe them that? Didn't 24 years of absence require some radical action to even begin to balance the scales? His phone buzzed. A text from Serena. How'd it go? Harlan sat in his car outside his mother's house, staring at those 3 words. How did he summarize what just happened? How did he explain that his family thought she was a con artist, that they'd offered to pay her off rather than accept her, that they'd rather bury her existence than acknowledge it? He typed, about as well as expected. They need time, but we're doing the test next week, and then there won't be any doubt. You okay? Was he? Harlan thought about it. He'd just alienated most of his family. He was being sued for incompetency. He was giving away an $8 million house. His brother thought he was a fool. His mother thought he was being manipulated. I'm okay. Better than okay. I'm finally doing something right. See you tomorrow for the site meeting? Wouldn't miss it. He drove home through late afternoon traffic, his mind racing. The paternity test was scheduled for Tuesday at a private lab that Richard had recommended. 3 business days for results. By Friday, he'd have documentation that no one could dispute. And then what? The family would demand he settle quietly. Serena would want to move forward with the house project. What would Mara do? She'd been so careful, so guarded. Even as they worked together on the project, she maintained a distance that Harlan understood but hated. He wanted more. Not just co-parenting, not just polite collaboration. He wanted what they'd had that summer 24 years ago. The laughter, the late-night conversations, the feeling that someone saw him as more than just a Pierce heir with a trust fund. But wanting wasn't the same as deserving. And Harlan knew he had years of proving himself ahead before Mara would even consider trusting him with her heart again, if she ever did. The weekend passed in a blur of emails and phone calls. Jim Rodriguez sent preliminary cost estimates for the renovation. Serena forwarded designs for the community center's logo. Mara texted questions about nonprofit structure and board requirements. They were building something together, the three of them, a family, however unconventional, a project, however ambitious, a future, however uncertain. Tuesday morning arrived cold and gray. Harlan met Serena and Mara at the lab at 9 a.m. sharp. The waiting room was sterile and impersonal. Magazines nobody read scattered on tables. CNN playing silently on a wall-mounted TV. A technician called them back, explained the procedure in practiced clinical tones, then swabbed their cheeks with efficient movements. The whole thing took less than 15 minutes. Results in 3 business days, the technician said. We'll email them to all parties. Walking back to the parking lot, Serena laughed nervously. That was weirdly anticlimactic. I expected something more dramatic. Like, what? Blood oaths and DNA sequencers. Mara smiled slightly. I don't know. Just more. Harlan understood. 24 years of questions, answered with a cotton swab and a 3-day wait. It felt insufficient for the weight of what was being determined. Want to get breakfast? He offered. There's a place nearby that makes killer pancakes. They ended up at a diner, not unlike Angelo's, squished into a booth meant for 2 people, but holding 3. They ordered too much food, pancakes and eggs and bacon and hash browns, and talked about everything except the test. Serena described a professor who kept calling her Susan. Mara told a story about a hotel guest who left a 3-foot garden gnome in his room with a note saying he's yours now. For 30 minutes, they were just 3 people eating breakfast and laughing at stupid jokes. Not a fragmented family waiting for DNA confirmation. Not people caught in legal battles and family drama. Just people. Harlan wished he could freeze that moment, package it up, and keep it for the dark days he knew were coming. But time doesn't stop for wishes. The days march forward. Wednesday passed with no news. Thursday dragged. By Friday morning, Harlan was checking his email every 15 minutes like a man obsessed. The results arrived at 2:47 p.m. His hands shook as he opened the attachment. Medical jargon filled the first page. Testing methodology, lab certification, quality assurance procedures. Then the second page, with its simple conclusion printed in bold letters. Probability of paternity, 99.99%. Harlan Pierce cannot be excluded as the biological father of Serena Linton. He stared at the words until they blurred. He'd known, had been absolutely certain. But seeing it in black and white, officially documented and legally binding, hit differently than knowing in his heart. She was his daughter. Officially, irrevocably. His phone rang. Serena, did you see? Her voice was thick with emotion. I saw. I know we already knew, but seeing it written down. She trailed off. I know. I feel it too. Silence on the line, both of them processing what this meant. Before this test, Serena's status had been questionable, deniable, open to interpretation. Now it was fact. Legal fact. The kind that changed birth certificates and inheritance rights and family trees. So what happens now? Serena asked. Now, Harlan said, we move forward. The house project, getting you properly recognized, all of it. No more questions. No more doubt. You're a Pierce, Serena, whether my family likes it or not. Do I have to be? A Pierce, I mean. Can't I just be yours without all the baggage that comes with a name? The question broke his heart a little. His daughter didn't want his family's legacy. Didn't want the weight of a name that had defined his entire existence. She just wanted a father. And somehow, that simple want felt like more than he deserved, but exactly what he needed to give. You can be whoever you want, Harlan said. The name is just paperwork. What matters is that you're mine, and I'm yours. The rest is details. Good details or bad details. Time will tell, but we'll figure out together. After hanging up, Harlan forwarded the results to Richard with a message. Proof as requested. Now, let's end this challenge for my family. Richard's response came within minutes. On it, this changes everything. They have no leg to stand on now. But Harlan knew better than to think a positive paternity test would make his family suddenly supportive. If anything, it might make them more defensive, more determined to protect what they saw as their territory from an interloper who now had legal claim to the Pierce name. The war wasn't over. It was just moving into a new phase. That evening, Harlan did something he'd been avoiding for weeks. He went to Catherine's grave. The cemetery was quiet, populated only by the dead and a handful of living who still visited them. Catherine's headstone was simple, black granite with her name, dates, and a line from a poem she loved. What is remembered lives. Harlan sat on the grass beside her grave, not caring that the ground was cold and damp. I need to tell you something, he said to the stone. And I need you to understand, even though you're not here to hear it. He told her about Mara, about the summer before their wedding, about the choice he'd made and the daughter he'd created and abandoned. He told her about Serena, about the test results, about the family drama and the house project, and all the ways his life had exploded in the past 2 months. I loved you, he said. I want you to know that. It wasn't the burning, consuming love that people write songs about, but it was real. We built a good life together, Catherine, a safe life, a stable life. And when you got sick, I was devastated because you deserved so much more than the hand you were dealt. Wind rustled through the trees, carrying the scent of coming rain. But I also need to be honest. I didn't give you all of me. I held parts back because I was scared, because I'd already given them away to someone else years before and never got them back. That wasn't fair to you. You deserved a husband who was fully present, not half there and half somewhere else. He traced her name on the headstone with his finger. I'm trying to be better now, to be whole, to actually show up for the people who need me. I think you'd understand. You were always better at being human than I was. More open, more real. I wish I'd learned that from you while you were here. A groundskeeper appeared in the distance, moving between graves with practiced efficiency. Harlan stood, brushing off his pants. I'm going to be okay, he told Catherine's grave. And I hope, wherever you are, you're okay too. You deserve better than me. But you got me anyway, and you made the best of it. Thank you for that. He walked back to his car feeling lighter somehow. Not unburdened. The weight of his choices would never fully lift, but less crushed by it. Catherine had been part of his story, an important part, but she wasn't the whole story. It was okay to move forward, to write new chapters that she wouldn't be part of. She'd want that, he thought. Catherine had never been selfish with happiness. What would she have thought of Serena? The question rolled around in his mind as he drove home. Would she have been hurt by the revelation? Angry? Understanding? He'd never know, and that uncertainty would haunt him forever. But he could control what happened next. That was in his power. Monday morning, Harlan met with his attorney to officially begin the process of recognizing Serena as his heir, birth certificate amendment, estate planning revisions, all the paperwork required to make what was emotionally true legally binding as well. This will take some time, Richard warned. Months, probably. The courts move slowly on these things. That's okay. We've already waited 24 years. A few more months won't kill us. And the house donation? Still moving forward with that. Absolutely. Can we accelerate the process now that the paternity issue is settled? Richard nodded. I'll draw up the paperwork. But Harlan, your family's challenge is withdrawn, but they're not happy. Marcus called me 3 times last week trying to find loopholes. Your mother's attorney has been asking pointed questions about your mental state. They're backing off legally, but not emotionally. I didn't expect them to welcome Serena with open arms. I just needed them to stop actively fighting me. Fair enough, but watch your back. Family politics can be nastier than legal battles. The warning proved prescient faster than Harlan expected. That evening, as he was reviewing renovation plans in his study, his phone exploded with notifications. Text messages, social media mentions, missed calls from numbers he didn't recognize. What the hell? He opened the first text from his sister Diana. Did you see this? Call me now. See what? Harlan pulled up his browser. and searched his name. The first result made his blood run cold. Secret heir revealed. Real estate mogul Harlan Pierce's hidden daughter emerges after decades. The reporters descended like locusts. By the time Harlan reached Mara's apartment building, 3 news vans were parked on the street. Cameras pointed at the second-floor windows like weapons. A small crowd had gathered, neighbors, onlookers, people with phones out recording everything for social media. This was a nightmare. Harlan parked a block away and walked quickly, head down, hoping to avoid recognition. It didn't work. A reporter spotted him, then another, and suddenly microphones were shoved in his face, and questions came rapid fire. Mr. Pierce, is it true you have a secret daughter? How long have you known about Serena Linton? Are you donating your house to her as compensation? Did your late wife know about your affair? He pushed through without responding, reaching the building's entrance just as someone inside buzzed him in. The door slammed behind him, cutting off the noise, and Harlan sagged against it, breathing hard. This was exactly what Mara had feared. The exposure, the judgment, the reduction of their complex story to sound bites and speculation. He'd promised to protect them, and he'd failed before he'd even really started. Upstairs, Mara opened the door before he could knock. Her face was pale, drawn tight with stress. They've been out there for hours. The landlord called. Other tenants are complaining. He's threatening eviction because we're causing a disturbance. He can't evict you for something you didn't cause. He can find a reason. This is month to month. We have no protection. She stepped back to let him in. Serena's in her room. She's pretty shaken up. The apartment felt smaller somehow, like the walls were closing in. Harlan could hear Serena's voice through her bedroom door, talking to someone on the phone. Her tone was clipped defensive. Who's she talking to? He asked. A friend who called to check on her, which really means getting the inside scoop for their group chat. Mara sank onto the couch. It's already everywhere, Harlan. Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. People from high school Serena hasn't talked to in years are reaching out. Her professors are asking questions. One news outlet called her the maid's daughter who struck gold. Like she won the lottery instead of just finding out who her father is. The bitterness in Mara's voice cut deep. This was exactly what she protected Serena from all these years. The gossip, the reduction of their lives to trashy headlines, the judgment from people who knew nothing about their story. I'm going to find out who leaked this, Harlan said. And I'm going to... Going to what? Sue them? Fire them? Make a big dramatic gesture that feeds the media circus even more. Mara shook her head. That's not going to help. The story is out. We can't put it back. So what do we do? I don't know. I've spent 24 years avoiding exactly the situation. She looked at him, and her eyes were tired. So tired. You wanted us to be part of your life. This is part of it. The scrutiny, the gossip, the people who think they have a right to our story because you're rich and it's interesting. Can you handle this? Can Serena? Before he could answer, Serena's door opened. She emerged looking exhausted and angry, her phone clutched in one hand. I'm trending, she said flatly. Hashtag Cinderella heiress. There are memes already. Someone made a before and after comparing pictures of me from high school to now with the caption, Poor girl to Pierce princess. It has 12,000 likes. The number hit Harlan like a punch. 12,000 strangers making jokes about his daughter's life. 12,000 people who knew nothing about her pain, her strength, her quiet dignity, reducing her to a punchline. I'm so sorry, he said. This isn't what I wanted. I never meant. I know. Serena sat next to her mother, but it happened anyway, and now we have to deal with it. We could make a statement, Harlan suggested. Control the narrative. Explain our side. And say what? Yes, I'm Harlan Pierce's secret daughter. Yes, my mom worked for him for 18 years. Yes, he just found out about me even though he saw me grow up. Please respect our privacy. Serena laughed without humor. That'll work great. I'm sure people will leave us alone after that. She was right. Any statement would just fuel more interest, more questions, more speculation. The media machine needed to be fed, and her story was perfect fodder. Wealthy man, secret child, class differences, family drama. It hit every button that made people click and share and comment. They were trapped in a story they didn't write, couldn't control, and didn't want. Harlan's phone rang. Richard, I found a leak, his attorney said without preamble. It was your mother. The words didn't compute at first. What? Eleanor Pierce gave an exclusive interview to the business section of the paper. She spun it as concern for the family's reputation, wanting to get ahead of potential scandals. She confirmed the paternity, mentioned the house donation, even provided some background about your relationship with Mara. Richard sounded apologetic. She framed it as responsible transparency. But Harlan, she knew what she was doing. This was calculated. His mother, the woman who'd preached family privacy his entire life, who'd taught him that Pierce business stayed Pierce business. She deliberately exposed Serena, throwing her to the media wolves, all in the name of, what? Controlling the narrative? Punishing him? Why? Harlan asked, though he suspected he already knew. Best guess? She thought if she controlled how the story came out, she could minimize damage to the family reputation. Present it as a youthful mistake that you're now responsibly addressing, rather than a scandal that got exposed. But it backfired. Once she confirmed the story, every outlet picked it up and ran with their own spin. Can we do anything? Sue for invasion of privacy. Not really. She's Serena's grandmother legally. She has some right to discuss family matters, even if it's a terrible idea ethically. Richard paused. Harlan, the damage is done. Now you need to focus on damage control and protecting Serena. After hanging up, Harlan turned to find both women watching him. It was your mother, Mara said. Not a question. Yes. Serena stood and walked to the window, carefully staying to the side, so the cameras below couldn't get a clear shot. My grandmother, who I've never met, who did want to acknowledge I existed. She's the one who did this. The pain in her voice made Harlan's chest ache. I'll talk to her. Don't. Serena turned back. Whatever her reasons were, talking to her now won't change anything. The story is out. We're public now. We just have to figure out how to live with it. I don't want you to have to live with it. You didn't ask for this. No, I didn't. But you know what? Maybe it's better this way. No more secrets. No more hiding. Everyone knows I'm your daughter now. They can think whatever they want about it, but at least it's the truth. Mara stood and crossed to her daughter, pulling her into a hug. Harlan watched them, feeling like an outsider looking in on a relationship he'd never be part of no matter how hard he tried. They'd survived decades without him. They had a bond forged in struggle and sacrifice that he couldn't replicate or replace. All he could do was stand beside them, if they'd let him. We should leave, he said suddenly. Go somewhere for a few days until this dies down. I have a cabin upstate. No neighbors, no reporters, just quiet. We can figure things out without cameras in our faces. Mara and Serena exchanged one of their wordless communication looks. Finally, Mara nodded. Okay, but we need to pack first, and I need to call my supervisor at the hotel. I'll call Jim and the other contractors, let them know the site meetings are postponed. Serena added. They move into crisis mode, each handling their piece of the evacuation. Harlan stood guard by the window, watching the news crews below. This was his family now, damaged, complicated, and under siege. But his. Within an hour, they'd packed bags and formed a plan. The trick would be getting out of the building, without being followed. Harlan called a car service he trusted, requesting they park in the back alley. Then he called the building super, explained the situation, and asked to use the back exit. This is like a heist movie. Serena muttered as they crept down the back stairs. Except instead of stealing something, we're just trying to live our lives. They made it to the car without incident and were 20 miles out of the city before anyone realized they'd left. Harlan watched the lights disappear in the rearview mirror and felt something loosen in his chest. His phone buzzed constantly. Marcus, Diana, his mother, reporters who'd gotten his number somehow. He turned it off. Thank you, Mara said quietly from the back seat. For helping us get away. It's the least I can do. I'm the reason you needed to escape in the first place. You're not the reason. Your mother is, and the reporters, and a society that treats people's lives like entertainment. She paused. But I appreciate you taking responsibility anyway. That's new. Was it a compliment or an observation? With Mara, it was hard to tell. But Harlan decided to take it as progress. The cabin appeared after 2 hours of driving, a small structure nestled in trees, with a lake view and blessed silence. No neighbors for half a mile in any direction. No self-service unless you climbed the hill. No internet except a satellite connection, so slow it was basically useless. Perfect. They unloaded in the dark, finding their way with flashlights and muscle memory. Harlan hadn't been here in years. It had been Catherine's favorite place, her escape from the city and his family's demands. After she died, he'd avoided it, unable to face the memories. But Catherine would have liked this, he thought, using her sanctuary to protect people who needed it. She'd always been more generous than him. They settled in awkwardly, figuring out sleeping arrangements and kitchen supplies. Mara and Serena took the 2 small bedrooms upstairs. Harlan would sleep on the couch in the main room, close enough to feel like part of things, far enough to give them space. That first night, they sat on the porch watching stars reflect on the lake. Serena had found an old acoustic guitar in a closet and was picking out melodies, half-remembered songs from high school. Mara wrapped herself in a blanket, eyes closed, face peaceful for the first time in days. And Harlan just watched them, these 2 women who'd survived without him, who were letting him try to be part of their lives despite every reason not to. "Can I ask you something?" Serena said suddenly, still playing. "Both of you. What happens after this? After the media circus dies down and we go back to real life, what are we to each other?" The question hung in the cool night air. What were they? Father and daughter, certainly. But what did that mean practically? Weekly dinners? Holidays together? Awkward small talk for the rest of their lives? "I'd like us to be family," Harlan said carefully. "But I know that takes time. Trust. Proof that I'm not going to disappear again when things get hard. Would you?" Serena stopped playing. Disappear? If it got too complicated or uncomfortable? It was a fair question. The old Harlan would have found an excuse, would have slowly pulled back, let visits become less frequent, convince himself it was for everyone's good. He'd done it before, with Mara, with friends who needed him, with any relationship that required real vulnerability. But that Harlan had also missed his daughter's entire childhood, had fired the woman he loved because it was easier than facing complicated feelings, had built a beautiful house and a successful business and a life that looked perfect from the outside while being hollow at the core. "No," he said firmly, "I won't disappear, even if it gets hard, especially if it gets hard, because that's when you need someone most." Serena studied him in the dim light, searching for the lie or hedge or loophole. Finding none, she nodded. "Okay, then I'd like us to be family, too. The real kind, not just the DNA kind." "And you?" Harlan asked Mara. "What do you want us to be?" She was quiet for a long time, staring at the lake. When she finally spoke, her voice was soft. "I want us to be honest, not performing or pretending or trying to be something we're not. Just real, messy and complicated and real. I can do that. Can you? Because being real means admitting when you're scared or overwhelmed or don't know what to do. It means not having all the answers, not being the hero who fixes everything." She looked at him. "Can you be vulnerable like that? Or will you fall back into the Harlan Pierce, who solves problems with money and control?" The question cut to the core of who he'd been his entire life. A fixer, a problem solver, a man who believed every issue had a solution if you just threw enough resources at it. But people weren't problems to be solved. Relationships couldn't be fixed with checkbooks and grand gestures. "I don't know," Harlan admitted. "I want to say yes. I want to promise I'll be different. But I've spent 49 years being one way. Changing won't happen overnight. I'm not asking for overnight. I'm asking for effort, for honesty about the struggle instead of pretending it's easy." Mara pulled the blanket tighter. "I spent 24 years pretending everything was fine when I was drowning. I won't do that anymore, and I won't accept it from you either." "Fair enough." They sat in silence after that, each lost in their own thoughts. The night sounds filled the quiet, crickets, wind through trees, the gentle lap of water against the dock. City noise felt a million miles away. On the third evening, as they packed to head back, Serena found Harlan on the porch. "I've been thinking," she said, sitting beside him, "about the house project, about what it represents." "What does it represent?" "Redemption, I guess. For you, a way to turn something selfish, a house that was just about displaying wealth, into something meaningful, something that helps people." She paused. "But I don't want it to be just your redemption story. I want it to be ours. All three of us. A statement about what family can be when people actually try." "I like that. What are you thinking?" "The community center should have programming for single parents, job training, childcare, support groups, and we should hire people like Mom to run it. People who know what it's like to struggle, to raise kids alone, to need help but be too proud to ask for it." Her eyes shone with the vision. "We turn your house into something that would have helped us 24 years ago." The rightness of it struck Harlan like a bell ringing. "That's brilliant. That's exactly what it should be. Mom would be perfect to run it, actually. She knows the community, knows the needs. She's been living this for 24 years. Have you asked her?" "Not yet. I wanted to run it by you first." Serena looked at him. "This is a partnership now. Between the three of us, we make decisions together." The word partnership settled into Harlan's chest with a warmth that surprised him. He'd spent his whole life making unilateral decisions, believing that power meant not having to consult anyone. But this felt better, stronger. "Let's ask her together." They found Mara inside, cleaning up the kitchen. When they presented the idea, she froze, dish towel in hand. "Run the community center? Me? You'd be perfect for it," Serena said. "You understand what people need because you've needed it. You're organized and efficient, and people trust you. Plus, you'd be working with us instead of for someone. It would be different. I don't have a degree in nonprofit management or social work, or—" "You have something better," Harlan interrupted. "Experience, heart, and the ability to see people as humans instead of problems to be solved. That's worth more than any degree." Mara set down the dish towel slowly. "You're serious. Completely serious. We'd pay you properly. Set up a real structure with benefits and support. You wouldn't have to clean hotel rooms anymore." Harlan moved closer. "You could do something that matters. Help people like you. Make a real difference. And you'd trust me with that? With your house, your money?" "It's not my house anymore. It's ours. All of ours. And yeah, I trust you with it. I trust you with a lot more than that." The emotion that crossed Mara's face was complex. Hope mixed with fear, excitement mixed with doubt. "Can I think about it?" "Of course. Take all the time you need." But Harlan could see the yes forming in her eyes. She wanted this, wanted a chance to build something meaningful, to use her decades of struggle for something bigger than just survival. They drove back to the city that night, returning to a world that knew their secret now. The media circus had died down slightly. New scandals had emerged to capture attention. But their story was still out there, still being discussed and dissected and judged. The difference was they faced it together. Over the next few weeks, they settled into a rhythm. Serena worked on final designs for the community center. Mara researched nonprofit structures and programming models. Harlan handled legal issues and started the donation process. And slowly, carefully, he and Mara rebuilt what they'd lost 24 years ago. Not the same relationship. They were different people now. But something new. Something that acknowledged the pain and loss while reaching toward possibility. They went on dates that weren't really dates. Coffee meetings that stretched into lunch. Evening walks where they talked about everything and nothing. Mara set boundaries, and Harlan respected them. She needed slow, needed proof, needed to see him choose her over and over before she could fully trust. He gave her that, gladly. 2 months after the paternity test, Harlan's attorney called with news. The birth certificate amendment had been approved. Officially, legally, on paper, Serena Linton was now Serena Linton Pierce. She could choose to use the Pierce name or not, but it was their acknowledged permanent. They celebrated at the same diner where they'd eaten after the DNA test. Just the three of them, squeezed into a booth, laughing over pancakes and bad coffee. To new beginnings, Serena raised her orange juice in a toast. And to family, the kind we choose, not just the kind we're born into. To family, Harlan and Mara echoed. And for the first time in 24 years, the toast felt complete. But there was one piece of unfinished business, one relationship that couldn't be left broken if they were going to truly move forward. Harlan had to face his mother. The Pierce family estate sat on 3 acres of perfectly manicured lawn, a monument to old money and older secrets. Harlan hadn't been back since the family meeting where he'd announced Serena's existence. That was 3 months ago, but it felt like years. He stood at the gate, finger hovering over the intercom button, second-guessing this decision. Mara had offered to come with him. So had Serena. But this was something he needed to do alone. A conversation between a son and mother that was decades overdue. He pressed the button. Yes. The housekeeper's voice crackled through the speaker. It's Harlan. I'm here to see my mother. A pause. Then the gate swung open with a mechanical hum that sounded like a warning. Eleanor Pierce received him in the sitting room where she conducted all her important business. She sat in her usual chair, dressed impeccably despite it being Saturday afternoon, looking every inch the matriarch who'd built and maintained an empire. Harlan. She didn't stand or offer the usual pleasantries. I wonder when you'd come. Did you? He remained standing, needing the height advantage even if it was petty. After you leaked Serena's identity to the press, did you wonder when I'd show up to ask why? I didn't leak anything. I gave a carefully considered statement to a reputable news outlet. There's a difference. The difference being what? That you controlled the message while destroying my daughter's privacy. Eleanor's expression didn't change. I protected this family. That girl's existence was going to come out eventually. Better to control the narrative than have it exposed in some scandal. That girl has a name. Serena, your granddaughter. A granddaughter I've never met, who was kept secret from this family for 24 years. Eleanor's voice remained calm, measured. You presented her as a fait accompli, Harlan, a fully grown woman with claims to the Pierce name and fortune. What did you expect? That we'd welcome her with open arms and no questions. I expected you to trust me, to give me the chance to handle this my own way. Your way was giving away an $8 million house without consulting anyone. Your way was appending decades of family planning because you felt guilty about a youthful indiscretion. She leaned forward slightly. Your way was putting emotion before sense. Again. The word again carried weight. Again, like when he wanted to marry Mara instead of Catherine. Again, like every time he'd chosen feeling over strategy. Again, like he was still the soft, emotional boy who disappointed his father. Maybe emotion should come before sense sometimes, Harlan said quietly. Maybe I should have led with emotion 24 years ago instead of listening to Dad's demands. If I had, I wouldn't have missed my daughter's entire childhood. If you had, you'd have lost everything your father built. The company, the reputation, the life you have now. Was it worth it? Would trading all of that for domesticity would have made really have been better? The casual dismissal of Mara as a maid, reducing a woman of dignity and strength to just her job, made Harlan's blood boil. But he forced himself to stay calm. Anger was what Eleanor wanted. Anger made him look unstable, emotional. Everything she'd already accused him of being. Yes, he said simply. It would have been worth it, because I'd have something real instead of this empty performance we call family. Empty. For the first time, a crack appeared in Eleanor's composure. I raised you, sacrificed for you, built an empire that would secure your future and your children's future. That's empty. It's not empty for you, but it was for me. I spent 49 years trying to be the son Dad wanted, the man you expected, the Pierce heir who put family legacy above everything else. And it made me miserable. Successful, but miserable. Eleanor stood slowly, her movements deliberate. She walked to the window overlooking the gardens where Harlan had played as a child. Your father and I gave you every opportunity. The best schools, the right connections, entry into a world most people can only dream about. And you're calling that empty? I'm saying it wasn't enough. Money and status and legacy, they're not nothing, but they're not everything either. Harlan joined her at the window. You taught me to value the Pierce name above all else, to protect it, preserve it, pass it on. But what's the point if we're not actually living, if we're just maintaining appearances and playing roles? The point is continuity, stability, knowing who you are and where you come from. I know where I come from, but I also know where I'm going. And it's not here, maintaining traditions that serve no purpose except tradition itself. Eleanor turned to face him, and for a moment, he saw past the careful mask of the woman underneath. She looked old, not just aged, but tired in a way that made his anger falter. Do you know what it's like, she said softly, to build something from nothing? Your father and I started with money, yes, but we built an empire. We created jobs, developed properties, made our mark, and we did it together as a team with a shared vision. We sacrificed romance and spontaneity for something bigger than ourselves. And it cost you. I remember how you and Dad fought, how you'd go days without speaking, how the house felt cold even with all of us in it. We had an understanding. We had respect. We had purpose. She looked away. Maybe it wasn't the passionate love story people write about, but it was real in its own way. And it worked. Until it didn't. Until Dad died, and you were left alone in this big house with nothing but memories of building something that didn't actually make you happy. The words hung between them, sharp and true. Eleanor's composure finally cracked completely, tears forming in her eyes. "Don't you dare," she whispered. "Don't you dare judge choices you never had to make. You've always had the luxury of emotion, of following your heart. Your father, and I didn't have that luxury. We had responsibilities. And I have a daughter I abandoned for 24 years because I was following the same script you and Dad wrote. Well, I'm done following that script, Mom. I'm writing a new one. By throwing away everything we built, by building something different, something that actually matters." Eleanor wiped her eyes with a handkerchief she pulled from her pocket. The gesture so practiced it was almost mechanical. "The house donation. You're really going through with it?" "Yes. And this girl, Serena, she's truly your daughter?" The paternity test confirmed it. But I knew before that. I see myself in her. What if she breaks your heart? What if she's using you for money and walks away once she gets what she wants? Harlan smiled sadly. "Then I'll survive. I've survived worse. And at least I'll know I tried, that I showed up for her instead of running away." Eleanor studied him for a long moment. "You've changed." "I hope so. It's not a compliment." "I know." She sighed, suddenly looking every one of her 73 years. "I suppose you want me to meet her, to acknowledge her as family. Only if you can do it without judgment, without reducing her to the maid's daughter, or treating her like an obligation." Harlan moved toward the door. "Serena doesn't need the Pierce name or this family's approval. She's doing just fine without it. But if you want to be part of her life, part of our lives, it has to be genuine. No performances, no maintaining appearances. Just real. I don't know if I know how to do that anymore." "Then learn. You're brilliant, Mom. You ran a company, managed complex deals, navigated impossible situations. Surely you can figure out how to be a grandmother." He left before she could respond, walking back through the house where he'd grown up feeling like a stranger in his own life. The weight of expectation seemed to lift with each step toward the door, toward the car, toward the life he was building instead of the one prescribed for him. His phone buzzed. A text from Serena. "How'd it go?" "Better than expected. Not great, but better. She might come around eventually. And if she doesn't, then we're still okay. We don't need her approval to be family. Love you, Dad." The words stopped in mid-stride. She'd said them before, but they still hit like a miracle every time. Love you, Dad. 2 words that meant everything. That made every difficult choice worth it. Love you too, kiddo. He drove back across the city toward the apartment where Mara and Serena were waiting. Traffic was heavy, giving him time to think. The conversation with his mother hadn't resolved anything. Not really. She might never fully accept Serena. The Pierce family might always see him as a disappointment who chose wrong. But for the first time in his life, Harlan didn't care. He'd spent 49 years seeking his parents' approval, trying to live up to impossible standards, molding himself into the shape they demanded, and it had left him hollow. Now he was choosing differently, choosing the messy, complicated, beautiful reality of being Serena's father and maybe, eventually, Mara's partner. Choosing the hard work of building real relationships instead of maintaining shallow ones. Choosing truth over appearances. It was terrifying. It was uncertain. But it was real. And real, Harlan was learning beat perfect every single time. When he arrived at the apartment, he found them in the midst of chaos. Blueprints covered every surface. Fabric samples draped over chairs. Color swatches taped the walls. The community center project had taken over their lives in the best possible way. "You're back!" Serena jumped up, nearly knocking over a stack of contractor estimates. "Tell us everything. Did she freak out? Cry? Threaten to disown you?" "All of the above. Also none of the above." Harlan settled on the couch, and immediately Mara handed him a beer. He smiled at her, and she smiled back, and the moment was so casually domestic it made his chest tight. "She's struggling with it. But I think maybe eventually she'll come around." "And if she doesn't?" Mara asked, echoing Serena's earlier text. "Then we move forward anyway. We don't need her blessing." "But it would be nice to have it," Serena said quietly. "I know she leaked the story and that was awful, but she's still your mom, still my grandmother. Even if we've never met, I don't want to be the reason your family falls apart." Harlan pulled her down to sit beside him. "You're not the reason. I am. I'm the one making choices that disrupt their comfortable world. And those are my choices, not yours to carry. But they affect me too." "They do, and I'm sorry about that." "But Serena, you existing is not a problem to be solved or a mistake to be managed. You're my daughter, the best thing I never knew I had. And anyone who can't accept that doesn't deserve to be part of our lives." She leaned into him, and Harlan wrapped an arm around her shoulders. Across the room, Mara watched with an expression he couldn't quite read. Not quite smiling, but something soft and warm that made him hope. They spent the evening going over plans for the community center. Jim Rodriguez had brought updated timelines. The permits were moving through bureaucracy faster than expected. Local news, after the initial scandal frenzy died down, had actually started covering the project positively, a wealthy man using his resources to help the community instead of just hoarding them. "We should have a groundbreaking ceremony," Serena suggested. "Make it official. Invite the neighborhood, local politicians, press who want to cover the story right. And your family," Mara added, looking at Harlan. "Give them a chance to be part of this, to see what we're building." "They won't come." Marcus made it clear. "Invite them anyway. Let them make their own choices." She walked over, sitting on his other side. "You can't control whether they accept this or not, but you can give them the opportunity." She was right. Harlan had spent so much energy fighting his family, being angry at their rejection, that he hadn't considered just letting them choose, inviting them in without demanding they accept everything immediately. "Okay," he agreed. "We invite everyone. Family, neighbors, city officials. Make it a real celebration of what this place is going to become." When Serena pulled out her phone, already making lists. 3 weeks? That gives us time to clean up the property, get the basic structure visible, make it presentable. They set a date, assigned tasks, divided responsibilities like the team they'd become, and watching them work together. His daughter and the woman he'd always loved, Harlan felt something he'd never experienced in the Pierce family mansion. He fell home. The next 3 weeks passed in a blur. The house was emptied of Harlan's personal belongings, most going to storage or charity. Contractors began preliminary work, tearing down non-structural walls, opening up spaces. The transformation from private mansion to public resource had begun. Invitations went out. Most Pierce family members politely declined or didn't respond at all. But Diana surprised everyone by accepting. And Harlan's mother, after a week of silence, sent a terse note. "I'll attend. Not I'll support this or I'm proud of you. Just I'll attend." But Harlan would take it. The morning of the groundbreaking arrived cold and bright. November sun cut through bare tree branches, illuminating the house on Elm Street in sharp relief. It looked different already, more purposeful somehow, like it knew it was about to become something that mattered. People started arriving at 10. Neighbors curious about what was happening to the old Pierce place. Local politicians sensing a good photo op reporters who'd covered the scandal and wanted to see how the story ended. And mixed in with all of them, a handful of faces Harlan recognized from the Pierce family gatherings. Diana came with her husband and teenage kids. She hugged Harlan stiffly, then turned to Serena. "So you're the famous niece. Welcome to the chaos." Tommy, Marcus's son, showed up despite his father forbidding it. "This is way cooler than sitting in a trust fund meeting," he told Serena. "Can I help with anything?" And finally, as the ceremony was about to start, a town car pulled up. Eleanor Pierce emerged, dressed impeccably as always, expression neutral. She surveyed the crowd, the house, the whole scene with the calculating eye of a woman, used to assessing situations quickly. Then she saw Serena. They locked eyes across the yard, grandmother and granddaughter meeting for the first time. Harlan held his breath, unsure what would happen. Would Eleanor walk away, make a scene, deliver some cutting remark that would ruin everything? Instead, she walked slowly toward Serena, her cane clicking against the pavement. When she reached her, Eleanor stopped and really looked, studying her granddaughter with the same intensity she'd once used in boardrooms. "You have your grandfather's eyes," she said finally, "and your father's stubborn chin." "Nice to meet you, too," Serena replied, and there was an edge to her voice that made Harlan proud. His daughter wasn't intimidated. Eleanor almost smiled. "Almost. I understand you're the architect on this project." "I am." "Show me." And just like that, Serena launched into an explanation of the design, walking Eleanor through the plans with confidence and passion. His mother listened, asked sharp questions, occasionally nodded. It wasn't warm, wasn't exactly approval, but it was engagement. It was Eleanor Pierce treating Serena as someone worth her time and attention. Progress. The ceremony itself was simple. Serena spoke about the vision for the Elm Street Community Center. Jim Rodriguez explained the timeline. Mara, after much convincing, said a few words about what the center would mean for single parents and struggling families in the neighborhood. And Harlan stood back, watching three women, his daughter, the love of his life, and his mother, share a stage. 3 generations of complicated relationships, difficult choices, and hard-won grace. When it was his turn to speak, he kept it brief. 24 years ago, I made a choice that seemed safe, but was actually just cowardice. I chose obligation over love, appearance over truth, and that choice cost me my daughter's childhood, cost her mother years of unnecessary struggle, and cost me the chance to be the man I could have been. He paused, finding Mara's eyes in the crowd. This house was a monument to that cowardice, a beautiful, empty place that represented everything I valued wrong. But now, thanks to Serena's vision and Mara's heart, it's becoming something better, something that helps instead of just impresses, something that matters. He lifted the ceremonial shovel to new beginnings, to second chances, and to the people who give them to us even when we don't deserve them. The shovel cut into earth that had been maintained perfectly for decades, but never used for anything meaningful. Applause rippled through the crowd. Cameras flashed, and Harlan thought about the path that had led here. Every mistake, every moment of cowardice, every missed opportunity. He wouldn't trade it. Not if it led to this moment. Not if it brought him to Serena and back to Mara. Not if it taught him what actually mattered before it was too late to learn. After the ceremony, people mingled. Harlan found himself face to face with his mother again. She stood alone near the house, studying the blueprints posted on a board. "What do you think?" he asked. "I think it's ambitious. Possibly too ambitious." She turned to him. "But then again, you always did aim higher than you should have." "Is that a compliment?" "It's an observation." She paused, and something in her expression softened. She's impressive. Your daughter. Sharp, confident, knows what she wants. She reminds me of myself at that age. Coming from Eleanor Pierce, there was no higher praise. She gets it from Mara. Harlan said, the strength, the determination. I contributed DNA, but Mara built the person. Don't sell yourself short. She has your mind for systems, your ability to see possibilities. Eleanor looked at him. I was wrong about exposing her to the press. I thought I was protecting the family, but really I was just trying to control an uncontrollable situation. It was wrong, and I apologize. Harlan had heard his mother apologize maybe 3 times in his entire life. This made 4. Thank you. That means a lot. Don't get used to it. The sharpness returned to her voice, but playfully. I'm still not sure about this whole project. It could fail spectacularly. It could, but we're going to try anyway. I know. That's what worries me. She started walking toward her car, then stopped. Marcus won't come around. He's too much like your father. Rigid. Convinced there's only one right way to do things. But Diana might, and some of the younger generation definitely will. You're giving them permission to be something other than Pierce automatons. They're grateful for that. What about you? Will you come around? Eleanor considered the question. I'm here, aren't I? That's a start. She left before he could respond. But Harlan found he was smiling. His mother had shown up, had met Serena, had even apologized in her own way. It wasn't total acceptance, but it was movement in the right direction. As the crowd thinned and afternoon faded toward evening, Harlan found Mara standing by the back garden, looking at the space where she'd spent so many hours working. Strange, isn't it? She said without turning. This place was my workplace for 18 years. Now it's going to be something completely different. Do you think that's good or bad? Good. Definitely good. But strange. She turned to face him. I keep expecting someone to yell at me for standing here instead of working, like I'm breaking some rule. The only rule now is that this place belongs to everyone, including you. She smiled, that warm, genuine smile that still made his heart skip. You did good today. The speech, the ceremony, even facing your mother, you showed up. I'm trying. Not always successfully, but trying. That's all anyone can ask. She moved closer, and Harlan's breath caught. They'd been dancing around this moment for months. The rebuilding of trust, the slow healing, the careful steps towards something more than just co-parenting. Mara, she kissed him. Not tentatively, not questioning, but with certainty, like she decided something and was claiming it. Harlan pulled her closer, and for a moment the world narrowed to just this. Her warmth, her softness, the feeling of coming home after being lost for 24 years. When they pulled apart, both were trembling slightly. Was that okay? She asked. That was more than okay. That was... long overdue? Yeah, very long overdue. They stood together as the last of the crowd dispersed, as the sun set behind the house that was becoming something new, as their daughter directed contractors and volunteers with the confidence of someone who knew exactly what she was building. This was family, not the perfect, airbrush version that looked good in Christmas cards. The messy, complicated, beautiful, real version, built on truth instead of appearances, on choice instead of obligation, on love that survived decades of separation, because some things are simply meant to be. Harlan had spent 49 years looking for meaning in all the wrong places. Turns out it was right here, in a daughter who'd forgiven him for missing her childhood, in a woman who'd given him a second chance he never deserved, in a house that was finally going to be used for something that mattered. He'd lost 24 years. But maybe, just maybe, he'd found something even more valuable. Hope, purpose, home, and love. Always love.